No, it's not enough.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the fourth episode of the In Touch Capstone interview series. My name is Taylor.
And I'm Anjali, and today we are so thrilled to be with one of our favorite teachers from James River High School, Mr. Jay Wu.
Hi, Mr. Wu.
Hi, Mr. Wu.
Hi, ladies. How are you?
We're doing
How are
good.
you?
Good. Doing well.
We're so excited to have you with us today. But to start off, we just wanted to know if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe a little about what led you to becoming an educator.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me. So, I first got into education because I was trying to figure out what I want to do in life. And as you know, most 17, 18-year-olds find out, that's not an easy question to answer, right? So I kind of jumped around with different majors, trying to figure out what do I want to do. And it wasn't until after I graduated college that I was like, oh, I enjoy working with people and helping them to understand things. So that kind of got me into coaching. So I started coaching volleyball, and from there I learned, hey, I should start to actually teach because that would be really cool. I could actually impart knowledge and make an impact. So that's really what got me going into that. So, like I said, I had already come out of college with my undergrad, so I had to go back and get a master's in education. But that's really what got me there. Um, and then when I really thought about it, my school that I grew up in was considered a really diverse school, but when I thought back, it really wasn't that diverse, um, even though they considered it to be. Like I was the only Asian kid in the entire district for as long as I could remember, and it wasn't until like I was like almost out of high school before there were other Asian families that started attending our school. So, when people talk about diversity, I'm like, I don't know if that's really there. Sometimes it's hidden. Sometimes it's there and you don't see it. But in my case, it really wasn't there. But uh, I went to Penn State, and well, at Penn State, there really is diversity. There's people from literally everywhere. Um, so it was really cool to see that mixture. And so when I came out and decided, hey, I want to impart knowledge, I decided that not only do I want to impart knowledge and pass on, hey, this is how to learn and how to see the world. I wanted to kind of share a little bit about my experiences as well, so that they could learn and grow from that as well.
That was
That is
awesome.
a beautiful story to how you knew you wanted to become a teacher.
Mhm.
Can you share a little bit about maybe your family and where you grew up?
Yeah. So my family and my parents and I, we are first generation immigrants from Taiwan. And my dad came over. So my parents worked at a steel factory, and that's how they met. So my dad was trying to save up money so he could come to the States and earn a degree. So that's what he did. And we kind of followed him over here, and really came out of nothing. Like my dad had literally nothing to his name. And I always hear the stories about how he had to live in a closet sized room with cinder blocks and plywood for a bed. So I'm constantly reminded of, we came from nothing and kind of worked our way up. I think in another episode, you guys talked to Tin, who also mentioned a similar story, right? So uh, ours is not that different. Like we had to build a life out of nothing, and so my dad worked really hard to get that degree so that he could then provide a good life for me and my siblings. So for the most part, I grew up in the States, but originally I am from Taiwan. So I could never be president. Um, but
That's a good
Missed
point.
opportunity.
I know, right?
You would be a great president.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So my siblings, I have a brother and a sister, and they are, in other places around the country and doing things as well. But we all had similar but different experiences growing up. We we all went to public school, but we also went to what we called Chinese school on Sunday afternoons, where we would learn some heritage and some language, and some culture, which was really cool and really unique because how many people get to say that they got to learn about their own heritage, on a consistent basis. So I'm now that I have a family of my own, I have my 2-year-old DJ. He just loves to learn. Um, we are planning on sending him to a Chinese school as well, so that he can get a piece of that too.
That's
Amazing.
awesome. That's so
Wow.
cool.
Thank you so much for sharing a bit about, your
Yeah,
background
that's
and your
really cool.
family. Yeah, that's really amazing. So, to start the questions, the official questions for our video, we're going to talk a bit about you being an educator, being that you are our teacher at James River High School. So our first question is, when we spoke before, you mentioned that you were originally hired at James River as an ESL teacher, which is an English as a second language teacher.
Mhm.
So our question is, what aspect of teaching ESL classes surprised or touched you the most?
So I got into ESL specifically working with students who are learning English as a second language, mainly because when I was a kid, I had to learn English as I was going through school. My parents didn't speak a whole lot of English when we came here to the States, so we were all just learning English as we go. So when I got into high school, I had the opportunity then to work with younger students who were struggling because they couldn't speak English. So this was about the time that ESL in general was becoming a thing here in the U.S. So I got involved in this volunteer program, and I helped tutor just younger students, specifically in math. Um, I would help explain things in Chinese to them, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, that makes more sense." And then they could then match the English and Chinese together, and then start to learn that way. When I applied to James River, I had included that, and they. It's kind of funny because they were looking for someone specifically to work with ESL students in math. And because I had that background already, because I'd already really done it as a volunteer, they just felt like it was a great fit. My first few years at James River, that was my primary assignment, so to speak. Um, so I worked with ESL students and got to know them and their backgrounds because they came from all over as well, right? Not everybody speaks Chinese. It might be a large population in the world, but not everyone speaks Chinese. So I had to kind of get to know their languages and their backgrounds and what kind of cultures they had and how did they view math and how did they do math. So I did a lot of learning myself in my first few years of teaching. But the learning part of it was really cool and fun for me because then they got to show me something while I was teaching them something. So there was a lot of back and forth. And so we could build great relationships because we were sharing things, right? And I think one of the main things that they were able to connect with was the fact that I was still learning English. Even as an adult, I'm still learning English. And every day I'm learning new words or new phrases or whatever because I haven't learned it all. There's a lot to learn, right? Um, Someone once told me, you never go a day without learning. If you ever do, then that's the day you die. I take that pretty literally. I'm always trying to learn something, and it doesn't have to be something big. It can be something small, but every day we should be learning something. I try to then pass that on to my students, whoever they are, and say, okay, you can learn something today, right? Big or small, you can learn something today. And I want to get through something. Um, so, uh, but back to the ESL students, what I found was it's not just about the um, it's not just about the grade for them, right? Because they're here trying to make a life, and so sometimes they don't really care about the math part, which is okay. I had one student a few years ago who he was working nights. He had overnight shifts because he was the main provider for his family, His mom was laid up and couldn't work, so he was the sole provider. And so he had trouble staying awake in class. And I said to him one day, I said, what can I do to help you? He said, I just need to know enough that I can get a good job so that I can buy my mom a house. But that was his goal. I said, okay. I said, let's not worry about this content. Let's get you the skills you need so that you can get that job. And so we worked on some basic things that he needed so that he could then get that promotion he was trying to get. And if he couldn't stay awake in class, then take a nap, put your head down, get some rest, because you're going to have to do it again. Right. So uh, I found when I was in school that the teacher who impacted me the most in math was the teacher who told me, go ahead, put your head down and take a nap today. And it wasn't because like she wanted to, keep me from misbehaving or anything like that. She just recognized I needed a nap and I'm going to do better if I get it. And so I saw the same thing in this kid. So I said, yeah, go ahead, take that nap. And once he's refreshed, now he's actually ready to learn. Otherwise, we're just fighting and butting heads, and nobody wins. That that I think was a big deal for him, and he recognized how much I was willing to kind of bend the rules, so to speak, to allow him then to be able to learn. And so after he graduated, he came back because we have this tradition at James River where ESL students have their own like mini graduation because they've overcome a lot to get to where they are. So we kind of celebrate that with a mini graduation. And he had come back to see some of his old friends, and he came up to me and he's like, "Guess what, Mr. Wu? I made it." And like that moment I was just like, this is amazing. Like that's why I got into teaching, right? Because I want to impart knowledge, but I just want to help students grow. And the fact that he could come back and say, I made it because of what you did, that is probably the best reward I could ever have. um, I've also had other students who I see out and about town, students who had otherwise thought that they couldn't go on and do other things, now are in college and learning to become teachers because they thought that I was the most influential person in their lives. Like that, like those are the most rewarding things a teacher could ever hear. So uh, while being an educator may not be the most lucrative career, it is definitely a very rewarding one.
That was
Yeah,
awesome.
I don't even know what
I
to
don't know what to
say.
say. That was
That-
such a cool story.
You were definite, like, I always envisioned you as that type of teacher, but now hearing like your stories and your mindset, just that's great. Everybody needs a teacher like that and
Yeah.
who has that type of understanding, and the fact that you're able to get it from teaching ESL kids is just like even more special.
Mhm. Yeah.
That was just amazing.
Our next question is, do you think your background or experience as a person of color has shaped the kind of teacher you are today? And I feel like it's kind of touched into the question you just answered, but
Yeah, I definitely think that it has an impact, right? You can't ignore where you came from or the experiences you have, and there's no way to then not let them influence what you do and how you behave. So definitely, my background uh, has influenced my philosophy and my approach, but also the students I come into contact with each year, because I'm still learning, I can tweak things based on, well, I tried this and it blew up in my face, or I tried this and it was phenomenal, right? So I definitely think that the diverse populations that I've worked with make a huge impact. Um, I go into teaching concepts with the mindset that the way I'm presenting it may not reach every student, whether that's because of the culture that they come from, whether that's because of the language that they speak primarily at home. It doesn't really matter. There's always going to be something that blocks the way that they understand what I'm saying. So I have to then figure out a way around that so that they can put, so that really they can wrap their minds around the concept. And I first learned that, surprisingly enough, I first learned that when I was coaching volleyball. I would explain, this is the mechanics behind doing this skill. And some kids would look at me and be like, that doesn't make sense to me. I'm like, okay, I've got to put this in a way that you can understand. And what I realized is, if I can draw on their own experiences and match it to that, then it's going to be easier to put two and two together, make that connection, right? Build that bridge. So, basketball players, I love working with basketball players because there's a lot of things that they do mechanically that tie into volleyball. And so if I tell them, hey, do this, they're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And all of a sudden they become a very good volleyball player because they're just tapping into something they already know. So in math, I do the same thing. You know this, so let's tie that together. And they're like, oh, okay, that makes more sense, right? We can go with that, you know. Whether I'm using English or Spanish or Chinese or whatever language, it's tying those concepts together that we already know so that we can move forward. And I think helping out with students of color, that has shown me that, no matter the student, they're here to learn and they have the ability to learn. I just got to find the way to reach them. Now, on the other side of that, when I look at just faculty in schools, you don't see a whole lot of at least Asian teachers, right? It's not. I wouldn't say our schools represent our country's population, but you definitely don't see a whole lot of Asian teachers. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Asians are told, well, you're supposed to become a doctor, or you're supposed to become an engineer, or something that's considered the smart careers. But I think it's important to have an Asian as an educator, because who are those other Asians going to look up to? I'm just saying. But I don't know. You don't have to keep
Yes.
that. But it's okay to not fit a stereotype. It's okay to break out of stereotypes and be the person that you want to be, or that you dream to be. I dreamt of being a NASA astronaut, but that didn't work out because I had glasses, but that's okay, because then I got to do something that really rewarded me and that I can be really passionate about.
All of your answers are just amazing.
I can safely say that some of my favorite moments in your class are when you say, you guys should know part of this from algebra. You're able to make that connection.
That's true. Yeah, you're very good at connecting the dots.
Yeah, that helps a lot.
Yeah.
I also really I do think it's so important to have you being of Asian descent, having you as a teacher, and representing just that population of people that, like you said, it's not as well represented as educators, and
in front of us every day. And
Yeah,
that's so cool to see.
I do think it's been really amazing to have you as a teacher, because you also you're not shy about sharing about yourself and about your experiences, and just having that ability to just learn things other than math in your classroom has been really great. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So time for we have a few more questions left. Yeah, last two questions. These are a bit more reflective on your perspective on the world and just you as a person, not necessarily as an educator. But our first question is, being that there are less teachers of color in our community, how has your experience as an educator shaped your idea of representation in schools or other areas of your life?
Okay, so teachers of color in the community are really important, because you have to be able to inspire young minds, right? And if there's no diversity in your faculty, then who are your students looking up to? Because if all of their role models look the same way, have the same backgrounds, have the same experiences, then there is no diversity, right? And we live in a country where we pride ourselves in our diversity. We call ourselves the melting pot. So if there is no melting pot, if there is no gumbo or jambalaya or whatever it is you throw into that pot, then how can you really have diversity? So students come from all different backgrounds. And so it's super important then for them to be able to relate to faculty who come from diverse backgrounds. And as faculty, then I believe it's our job to really impart all those little pieces that you're not otherwise going to get. Like I share about my family experiences. Why? Not because you don't have family experiences, you all do. But I share them because one, you need to get to know me. And this is my way of doing that. If I share my life with you, you get to see a piece of me that you otherwise wouldn't. If I was up there every day and just all I did was lecture and never talked about anything other than math, well, then how are we going to connect? So I share my life with you so that we can get to know each other, so that we can connect on a deeper level, and so that you can see that it's okay to be yourself, whatever that is, wherever you come from, whatever your experience is. That's okay because that's what made you you. And so I think it's super important then that we uh, encourage people of color then to get into the schools. We just need more role models of diverse backgrounds.
Yeah, and again, I would like to say thank you because you have been sharing yourself with
Yeah.
us throughout the year, even virtually. And it's truly been amazing. Like, I feel like I know more
Yeah,
about
we've been able to
you
connect on such a
than I
different
do
level.
about most of my teachers. And I just think that's a really cool thing to know you a little bit as a person and as a
rather
teacher.
than just a teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a great way to expand on relationships.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for watching this video. We hope you guys have enjoyed listening to us and our conversation with our math teacher. We hope you guys come back and watch our next episode. And again, thank you, Mr. Wu.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing about yourself and about your experiences. And we will see you in our next episode. Bye. Guys.